All right, happy first week of these NBA playoffs, which also happens to be the first few days of the NBA's award season. Over the last couple of days, we have seen the league start to hand out some of its hardware. Victor Wembanyama, to the surprise of absolutely no one, is your Defensive Player of the Year, the first unanimous winner of the Defensive Player of the Year award. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who has been the premier clutch scorer in the NBA all season long, winning the Clutch Player of the Year. And over the next couple of days and weeks, you're going to see the NBA start to hand out more of these end-of-season awards. Now, I am one of the 100 voters that has a vote on all these awards. So over the next couple of days, I'm going to be putting together these videos explaining some of my more notable votes, or maybe some of my tougher votes. We'll see how it goes over the next couple of days. And we have to start with MVP, which is the biggest award that the NBA has. And this was the most competitive race that I can remember in a long time. You had probably 6 players that could make reasonable cases that they could be MVP. And that's rare in modern day NBA. I mean, really, for most of the last 20, 25 years, you've had one player getting like 90% or more of the votes. You've had a couple of years where there have been 2 players with double-digit first-place votes, but for the most part, you don't see this kind of depth when it comes to legitimate candidates for MVP. But that's what we had this year. We've had some really great players in both conferences putting up some incredible performances. So let's just jump right into it. The top of my ballot, my vote, went to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And for me, it really wasn't that difficult a vote. To me, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the most consistently brilliant player all season long. I know there's a temptation to look at late season games, and other players like Victor Wembanyama, Nikola Jokic had strong finishes to the season, but this is a season-long award. And you can't overlook the dominance that Gilgeous-Alexander was playing with early in the season. Back in November, December, when Jaylen Williams was out of the lineup for Oklahoma City, Shai was outstanding. The Thunder were 18-1 before Jaylen Williams played a single game. They went 35-4 in the games that Gilgeous-Alexander played and Jaylen Williams did not. This is an all-NBA guard that was absent for roughly half the season in Oklahoma City. And Gilgeous-Alexander carried this team to the top record in the Western Conference. So I give him credit for that. His consistency all season long was another big reason. He averaged 30 points per game in every full month that he played in. He shot at least 52% from the floor in every full month that he played in. He had career highs in assists. He was a low turnover guy, around 2 per game. He was outstanding, really, all season long. And there may have been months that other players had better months than Shai, but for consistency, the entirety of the season, Shai was outstanding, was brilliant. Also a two-way player, one of the better defensive guards in this league, so that factored in as well. Number 2 on my ballot was Victor Wembanyama. And if you want to create an MVP for the second half of the season, or an MVP from January on, it probably would be Wembanyama, who was just dominant on the defensive end of the floor all season long. What worked against Wemby was a couple of things. One, he had a slow start to the season. He missed 12 games early because of injury. And when he came back, he was eased back into the lineup. And he was really eased back into the whole season. He averaged 29.2 minutes per game during the regular season. For context, no MVP has ever averaged less than 30 minutes per game. And, Wemby was trying to buck those odds. I mean, if anybody could have done it, it probably would have been Wembanyama, because he's a unique defensive player, maybe the greatest defensive player that we've ever seen. And his offense is pretty damn good. 25 points, 11.5 rebounds, 3.1 blocks. If you push those numbers out in the per 36 minutes, they're even better. 30, 14, 3.8. He's not the polished offensive player that Jokic and Shai are, but he's pretty good. You can't just defend him with small guys anymore. He can run transition like a 7'4" point guard, do a lot of different things on the offensive end. So, look, he wasn't my MVP this year, but you give him a healthy next season, push him above 30 minutes per game, pretty good chance he's going to open next season as the front runner for MVP. Third on my ballot is Nikola Jokic, who had just another unbelievable offensive season, leading the NBA in rebounds and assists. No player in NBA history has ever led the league in rebounds per game and assists per game in a single season. You have to go back to the days of Wilt Chamberlain when they weren't using these numbers on averages. They were using totals to find a player that put up those kind of numbers, rebounding and assist. He was just outstanding all season long for Denver offensively. The argument against him, it probably boils down to defense, which stands out in a crowd like this. Denver was a mediocre defensive team all season long, 21st in the NBA in defensive efficiency. And look, Jokic isn't the reason that they were so bad. Aaron Gordon missing 46 games this year was a big part of that as well. But his defense, which has never been great, definitely slipped in the second half of the season when he was coming back from that knee injury. You watch these games, teams will dump him into pick and rolls. He doesn't have great lateral movement. He doesn't have great footwork. He's got soft hands, which can lead to deflections, and that's part of defense. But he's never been a rim protector, less than a block average per game this season. So not being a great defender is a bit of a separator for me on that end. Luka Doncic came in number 4 on my ballot. And Luka really surged at the end of this season to go from a guy that I had kind of in that 4, 5, 6 range to taking that number 4 spot. He is, quite simply, the most inimitable offensive player in the NBA. He had this absurdly productive March where he averaged like 37.5 points per game, shot 50% from the floor, almost 40% from three-point range. He had that game against Miami where he scored 60 on the second night of a back-to-back. That was the single best offensive game I've seen all year long. With all due respect to Bam Adebayo's 83, Luka Doncic on the second end of a back-to-back where his team got in at like 5 o'clock in the morning, where he was in a competitive game against Miami and the Lakers needed every one of those 60 points. He was brilliant. That was the best game I've seen all season long. The difference maker here is, again, defense. Luka is not a bad individual defender, but when you talk to assistant coaches, if you just watch the games, I guess, he gets lost a little bit in team defense. He's constantly arguing with officials. He's got to find a way to clean up that end of the floor, because even if he's just a serviceable defender, he's a guy that should be in the mix, top 2 for MVP as early as next season. The 5th spot was probably the most challenging spot for me. Because there's 2 guys there, Jaylen Brown and Cade Cunningham, that deserve strong consideration. I went with Jaylen Brown, and it was largely because that Jaylen Brown was the driving force behind the most unexpected season in the NBA. I mean, I don't know how many people that picked the Celtics to have a better than 500 record going into this year. They start the year off 0-3, and people are predicting they're going to be even worse. They won 56 games. And Jaylen Brown was the driving force behind that surge. He led the NBA in field goals. He led the NBA in total points. He was one of 2 players who averaged 28 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. And they came like within 5 games of duplicating the win total from last season. I know that there's a lot of guys in Boston that deserve credit for it. Joe Mazzulla for his coaching, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard for stepping up, Neemias Queta for becoming a most improved candidate, Baylor Shireman for taking off in the second half of the season. But this year, Jaylen Brown went from all-star to all-NBA first-team caliber guy. He went from really good player to great player. He made a huge leap this year and he deserves to be recognized for it. Jaylen Brown gets that 5th spot for MVP. But again, an incredible field this year. The deepest field that I've ever had to choose from as a voter. And I think the deepest field many people have seen in a long time.
Hit subscribe for more news, highlights, and analysis from the NBA on NBC.